Don't move! Stop! Stop!
We are getting our first look at dash camera video of the moments leading up to a deadly police shooting. It comes as a grand jury rules in the officer's case. There will be no criminal charges against an Austin police officer who was fired after shooting an unarmed, naked teenager.
Grand jury decided against indicting Geoffrey Freeman for the shooting death of David Joseph, and because of that, we are seeing evidence for the first time. KXAN's Chris Sadeghi joining us live from Nature's Bend in North Austin. That's where the shooting happened. Chris?
Robert, when the chief of police fired Geoffrey Freeman, he said he did so because Freeman violated the department's use of force policies and that the way he confronted David Joseph that day was not objectively reasonable. But now we're hearing, in Freeman's words, what was going through his head when he pulled up this far from me to the camera. That's how far he was from David Joseph when he pulled up and then fired those shots 7 seconds later. Freeman pulls around and sees Joseph in the street, stopping about 100 feet from him when everything happens.
Stop right there, man. Stop right there.
Hey, Jeff, I'm going 35. Give me 1 second.
Stop! Stop! Stop!
Those few seconds cost Joseph his life and Freeman his job. But a grand jury says Freeman's actions were objectively reasonable.
We were confident that this was going to be the result.
Shots fired, shots fired.
Officer Association President Ken Cassidy has said from the beginning the dashcam video would vindicate Freeman.
You need to put yourself in that officer's shoes.
Freeman himself said in his statement after the shooting what it was like in his shoes. He said Joseph kept coming at him and he fired those shots when he got just outside arm's length distance. One of the points in the memo for his firing said he had less deadly options, but Freeman said he did not feel like he had time to holster his weapons and switch to taser, or else he could have been tackled and his weapon could have hit the ground or he'd get beat up. An explanation that wasn't good enough to save his job, but was good enough for the grand jury. Next, we'll find out if it's good enough for an arbitrator.
In my opinion, Geoffrey Freeman should be put back to work today immediately.
And that arbitration is expected sometime in the next 3 to 6 months. And if an arbitrator rules Freeman was within the department policies, he could be back on the force. We're live in North Austin tonight. Chris Sadeghi, KXAN News.
We're still waiting to hear from the family of David Joseph.
The family's lawyer spoke to reporters earlier this afternoon.
All that officer had to do was move out of the way, and he didn't. Instead, he fired on a young man. And the fact of the matter is, my 12-year-old running towards a police officer, he wouldn't have been shot. The colleague I just came out of here with the city, his 17-year-old son, wouldn't have been shot. This happens way too often in the African-American community, and it's an absolute travesty. And until we start holding the police criminally accountable, nothing's going to change.
It is rare for a grand jury to indict a police officer for a deadly shooting.
For Austin police, it's only happened twice in the past 20 years. Back in 2004, a grand jury indicted Officer Scott Glasgow for killing Jesse Owens during a traffic stop. The charge, criminally negligent homicide, but a judge later overturned that indictment. Glasgow remained on the APD force. In 2014, Detective Charles Kleinert faced a manslaughter indictment for the deadly shooting of Larry Jackson Jr. The case moved to federal court, where the charges against Kleinert were dropped. But even when officers get cleared in court, their departments often pay settlements to the victims' families. For example, in Kleinert's case, the city of Austin approved a $1.25 million payment to Jackson's 3 children to settle a civil lawsuit. The city also separately approved a $600,000 payment to settle a lawsuit from Jackson's parents. David Joseph's lawyer today said he plans to file a civil lawsuit against Freeman and the city of Austin.